truck. Okay, I'll believe you. All right. Let me take my coat off.
Fred, look at your airplane. Nice job. Yeah. It's nice installation.
Okay, welcome to the January safety meeting for the March Air Force Base Aero Club. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're probably in the wrong meeting. My name is Roger Mann, and the Aero Club manager is Bob Pierce back there, which most of you should know. Tonight you do not have to look at me. I'm going to go and sit down just like the rest of you and watch our guest speaker tonight. And we're going to be talking about some birds, but right now we're just going to go in here and just start on our agenda like we normally do so we can get moving so he can get started with his program. Okay, do we have any new people in here? I don't really see. I see people haven't been around for a while. You know, but yeah, I don't think we do. Okay. Okay, has anybody done like their first solo, their first something in an airplane? That includes anybody who flies for the Air Force or Navy or Marines. Helicopters will even allow those guys to say something too.
I'm waiting for my first flight of the year.
Oh, yeah, I know. Your airplane has been out, right? Yeah. Now we can get started. Okay. Here comes the doctor. Okay.
We're legally okay.
We got the lawyers, we got 2 doctors in the house, so we're in good shape. Yeah. And a whole bunch of pilots. Okay, has anybody gotten anything done lately? You know, have you been violated by the FAA? Well, Murph is the one that does that kind of stuff.
Everything looks good so far this year.
So far? Okay. This year. It's only, what, the 20th? Okay. All right. Experiences. This is where we have a chance to be able to talk a little bit about something that you might have had exciting thing to talk about. Doesn't even have to be exciting. Just, you know, anybody got any flat tires or anybody hit an animal on the runway? Talking about somebody that's a walking safety problem. No. Right now we're talking about, has anybody done anything new? Like I know, like Andrew, I think has done some things, but he didn't stand up.
Everything's new, boss.
Well, I know it is
I think
true.
he's soloed since the last
Yeah,
meeting.
but you soloed since the last meeting. But I know you did some night flying too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a first.
That was exciting.
Yeah. Okay. You're second. What was first?
What?
When was the first time you flew at night?
This is the first time.
Okay, that's what I was
I
just.
said it was exciting.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Nobody's been violated or nothing. Okay. Not yet. All right. How about Tyler and George isn't here? Anything exciting happened at Palm Springs?
When her plane blew its engine, taking off, had a crack that turned into a hole in one cylinder, and retired Air Guard General flying it managed to get it around and land it, so he had to hitch a ride home to Phoenix with somebody else. George is on his way to a helicopter crash at Ramona, so I don't know whether that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, then he'll have something to talk about next meeting then. Yeah.
Whose airplane was that, Tyler? Is that Stitch's?
Stitch.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
I'll give him some shit. Give him an engine.
Yeah.
He needs 40,000 right now.
Yeah. Jack, you know, you came back to an airplane after being out for a while. I think that's well worthy to talk about a little bit.
He's learning how to figure out what the
He's-
VOR and the ILS is right now.
Well, Yeah, Jack has been going for his instrument rating back there and the 182, and so far I haven't seen his instructor John yell at him too loud, so I guess he's doing okay. Yeah, you're just getting started, right? Or are you about halfway through?
About halfway.
About halfway? Okay.
Hey, Bill over here has got a new baby in the family.
Not yet. We're still waiting.
Oh, is it in later?
Oh, gosh.
Bill, I didn't do it.
Let me tell you, you scared the hell out of somebody.
What are you gonna do, Fred?
I don't know, I've been on Facebook, I've been
Well, they're trying to get a new airplane, that's all.
Oh. Yeah, our airplane's supposed to be down here this weekend, I hope.
Oh, don't be, yeah.
You
Let's
hope.
change
Weather permitting.
Yeah,
If the weather gods cooperate.
Well, we hope you can get it down here, because we all want to look at it and see what it looks like, and then steal it and things like that. Murph, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I just had a couple of reminders. Let me introduce myself. I'm the air traffic control rep for March. If I haven't got to introduce myself. If you get a chance, please come by our new tower. Fred can attest to it. It's one of the neatest looking towers you'll ever get a chance to visit, and we'd appreciate your coming through and visiting us. My real issue tonight was just to remind all Air Club members, if it's a holiday, there's only one person in that tower. So that restricts you to take off, depart, come back in and land. You can't do multiple approaches at March. That's a restriction. There's none of the FBOs going to be open. The only airplanes that are authorized is the Air Club for one departure, one arrival. And of course, if we have a local arrival coming back in, that is a military operation, it has to be approval by the OG. So just remember that when you're planning purposes, don't expect to do touch and goes at March. And the issue with that is if something did occur with one person in the tower, there's a lot of fuss that has to go on. If it did occur, they may limit the Aero Club from doing any operations on a holiday. So we don't want that to stop. Everybody needs that income. You guys need your flying time.
Yeah, and to add on that, the Aero Club they're only allowing us to operate during the holidays as a courtesy. It's not a requirement, even though we're an FSS squadron. We come under the 452nd here. So just remember, it's a courtesy to the Aero Club to allow us to fly on the weekend. Just don't take advantage of it and don't create problems. But if they say we're going to be closed like they did during the New Year's Eve, I forgot it closed on the 31st, I think, or the 30th, and it was closed to 7 o'clock on January the 2nd, that's because there are restrictions that they have to comply with. And that even goes to the FBO. So that's what he's trying to do. So if you got an issue, come see me, and then I'll go somewhere else and ask the question. Because we had a problem yesterday of someone coming in. It was an outside source, and they couldn't understand why they couldn't go to the FBO. And that was the field was closed because it was a holiday. And that's what he's talking about. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I explained a little bit more.
You talk better pilot language than I do.
That's because you haven't flown for a while.
That's true. I forgot how to fly. If you don't have my number and you want it, Roger doesn't have it, or
Bob,
you know, it's 4848, makes it real simple. It's 655-4848.
Yeah.
And please come by and see us. If you have any concerns, questions, call me. I'm working right now Monday through Friday. Something does occur, if Roger or Bob can't answer it, please contact me. We'll get the issue resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah. Chris,
Yeah, just
he's the guy you do want to talk to.
Yeah,
He's
just a
the guy.
question. As
Sure.
far as like, I just teach over at the Air Club, so I was curious, like, is there any prior arrangements we have to make? Or can I just stop by the tower with a student and ask you guys some questions kind of thing, or? Just give you guys
Most of the
a
time,
call?
yes.
Okay. Because I think it'd be cool for students to see who they're
It
talking
is.
to.
It's
you know?
really an eye-opener. Works both ways too. You know,
Right.
we like to get our controllers that for an orientation flights too. And used to do it quite a bit often. Fred used to take people up all the time.
Yeah.
So it works both ways. People don't understand what each side is doing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody, they call ground control and they think they're sitting on the ground. Well, actually they're up in the tower.
Yeah.
People have this interpretation of that. So things like that, you know, interaction. I have a restricted line, so I can't give it to you. Call directly to the tower. Bob might have it. Yeah. So if he's around, ask him to call the tower and see if there's any issue to come up. No, there's no issue. If they had the manning, now that with the new security system in the tower, we just can't buzz you in, you walk up like the old towers.
Yeah.
You have somebody come down and physically escort you up
Oh, okay.
to the tower.
Cool.
So,
Eventually, we'd like to do a tour, just do groups of 5.
Yep.
And we do spread it out through a week or 2 weeks, and do that so they can have it.
definitely. On the weekends too, if you want to set something up, I'll be, be glad.
That's what we're looking at, so
Yeah.
we'll work with you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thanks. Joan, did you have something that, mine's be now to bring it up?
Okay.
Yeah, stand up.
I received some information about a slideshow presentation. It's going to be happening next Wednesday night, January 28th. It's going to be presented by Rod Dykman. I'm not sure if I'm saying the last name right. He flew SR-71s, and so he's going to do a slide presentation. And it's at the Fallbrook Public Library, and it's open to the public, and it's at 7 o'clock. So if anybody's interested, we may go. Yeah, we'll probably go.
Yeah, it's closer to you.
Okay, anybody else that has anything to say? I know Bob, don't be too long. His program's about 40 minutes long or so,
I'll be glad.
good. You'll be talking up next. Know your SOPs, we kind of run over that real quick. Birds, how to avoid them. We'll be talking about that with our special guest. Okay, know your SOPs. Right now, what we do is we just go through the
Hey, you just
SOPs.
bypassed me.
Yep, that's right.
You're still gonna get.
I'm just going to go through this real quick, and then I'll get you up there. Aero Club scheduling and cost procedures. Okay, everybody knows about Flight Schedule Pro, right? Anybody here that doesn't know what Flight Schedule Pro is? Okay, it's the scheduling program which you use. SOPs say that you're not supposed to be using it unless you're in good standing with the Aero Club, which means you're paid up on your dues. So far as I know, everybody here is pretty much paid up on their dues except for Gene, and that'll be taken care of tomorrow. Yes, you. And that's only because we just haven't gotten his card run through. Flight Schedule Pro is it does have a hierarchy. It's first come first served basis except for a check ride. So if you have an FAA check ride, so like if you have a student that's got the airplane for a check ride, that's a high priority. And for obvious reasons, because it's hard for that student to get the scheduling done with the examiner, let alone the fact that, they're scared to death and they need the airplane and they need to get the thing going. Joan wouldn't know what I'm talking about on that. So she was cool and calm the whole time. In all cases, Bob has the final say-so. So, however, I do try to influence him, okay? Just thought I'd let you know on that. Okay, all right, Aero Club manager.
One of the priorities, by the way, for scheduling also is funerals at the National Cemetery thereafter. We try and accommodate those veterans that have passed before us in serving our country, so that becomes a priority. So if there are issues in scheduling, call me or Roger, and we'll try and resolve that issue. Some things real quick. Malcolm Campbell was in the hospital a couple weeks ago. David G. walked in, he was on the floor, passed out, white, and so we got him to the hospital. They couldn't find anything wrong. He thought it was a heart attack. Sent him home. He's been doing very good. He came out last week and was doing fine. I got a phone call this afternoon. He's back in the hospital and driving himself to
Emergency room.
Emergency
Yeah.
room or somewhere. He got in an automobile accident, whether that was part of his system or not. We don't know what's going on. I'm going to try and make some phone calls tomorrow again and see what's happening. So I'll go out with an email and post you what's happening with Malcolm on an email through Flight Schedule Pro, so everybody will get it. Airport changes. There are a lot of changes going on with the airport, and that is the ops group commander, Colonel Sigler, who's been a very good friend to the Aero Club, will be leaving on the 23rd of February. He's been a great supporter for this Aero Club, and he runs the show for any kind of operations here on the base. Excellent individual, very personal, man-to-man type individual. You can go in there and rap on his desk and talk with him, and he's just a real super. So we hope that when his replacement comes in, that we'll have the same rapport for the Aero Club and that ops group commander in regards to him. The second one person that's leaving, I understand, and correct me, Murph, if I'm wrong, but I understand now that Chris Davis is looking at the end of February for leaving, and he's the one that's been controls all of the operations as a GS-12 and civilian fare. He'll be leaving at the end of February also. So again, we're not sure who's going to show up. We hope again that that person will allow us to fly on the weekends and continue to operate in the same operation we've been doing for the last number of years here on this base. So we have some changes. The FBO has got a new terminal on the south west side of the field. They're putting in a restaurant, and but right now we understand it's just the four walls. They're waiting for some other things, but they'll eventually have a restaurant at the FBO, and that will be in operation. There are some issues in regards to how the tower is going to be paid for certain operations, and they want to operate 24/7. That's out of our realm. I'm just trying to give you some information that's going on. The GCA system is up and operating. They're looking at new approaches to the airfield. They're going to be X, Y, and Z. So some of the approaches into the field are going to be high and low altitude, and they're going to be kind of overlapping under the same thing, but just being called eventually. So those people who are under instrument training, just be aware, come April, somewhere around April 30th is the guess right now, that these approach plates will all be changed. So if you're kind of using an old approach plate, just remember it's going to be changed, so you need to be updated, and they'll be pretty compatible. If I got any changes, be sure and correct me on that.
Yeah, it's all tentative right now.
Yeah, everything is kind of tentative. Communications. We're having issues with the fax. All of the telephones at the base right now, except for the fax machine, are down and not operating. They even lost some of their TV stuff. They're trying to work on it. Nobody knows what's taking place. So if you file a fax, you have to call them on the fax number. There is a sheet of paper backed by the fax machine. It may take you a couple times to press the send button, the send button to get it to work, and then to call operations until we put up a new sign saying it's back to normal. Call them on the fax number. Sometimes they'll answer the phone and here it's a fax, resend it immediately, because they don't know whether it's a regular call coming in or it's a fax. And you know, it's a brand new system. It's been working, but you know, if you look at our hangar and you go out the back side, it looks like India with all the spaghetti hanging all over the telephone poles and down. And we're looking at 1932, and it hasn't changed since. We just keep adding more and more jazz to it to make it look nice, but it doesn't work. So anyway, that's the way it is. Civilian finance, there's going to be from safety office under the MACA program, which is the March Airfield Control Area. Is that right? The MACA, M-A-C-A? I know it's March Airfield. Anyway, in February, somewhere around the 11th, they're looking at a seminar here on the base. We're invited, along with outsiders that register. So it's going to be like another safety program, and we're going to try and get into the program where for the FAST program for the FAA, we'll have cards that will be signed off, and they're going to cover items from GCA to security in the base, operations of the base, operations around the base, heavy aircraft, and etc. And it's going to be on a Wednesday evening, I believe.
On the 11th.
On February the 11th. So when we get more information, we'll send that out to everybody. And that's going to be a fast program, so you'll be able to get your wings. And just remember, you get it signed off in your card with 4 hours with an instructor. You get into the first stage. It goes all the way up to stage 12. And that's a plus for you when it comes to safety issues here. I think I covered that. Murphy covered the holiday flying. Credit cards. We're having issues with credit cards. Instructors, be sure that the credit card is filled out right. Roger has a card it's an example up there. So under authorization, what goes in the authorization? It's the 3-digit code, remember? And then under the line below that is the number of the invoice. Now, if you're just taking and doing the write-in, like the old write-in invoice, put that number in there. So make sure you can read it, make sure you understand where the numbers are, and that we have the 3-digit code. We're getting credit card slips now without the 3-digit code, or someone forgot to sign it because we're in a rush. If this continues, we're gonna have to start charging because it's taking Roger's time and my time. And I don't want that to happen. It's a club. Everybody's supposed to be policing themselves and make sure. So help us out by ensuring that your credit card is done. Spend an extra 5 minutes. Don't rush it because you gotta be at a class or you gotta be somewhere else. You're just gonna have to plan accordingly and give yourself a few extra minutes to land and make sure that the credit card is done properly. It's creating an issue with us and it's creating additional work. Friday, we got out at 6:30 on last Friday because we had issues with the computer and other issues. So we do have our issues within the system for the computer and accounting. And Roger just turned on his hair. He's gonna look like me pretty soon. He can't afford it.
No.
Anyway, covered that. AJS, I need to see you after the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Let's see, okay, I think, has anybody got any questions so far? Anything going on? Nothing? Okay, all right. We are gonna be taught how to not hit a bird. And David Brisnell, okay, and he is the March Aero Reserve Bay Bash program. And he's gonna do the presentation tonight, and while he's coming up here to start talking, I'm gonna change the program over to his PowerPoint presentation. All right, come on.
Is this the first question? How not to hit birds?
Yeah.
Don't fly.
Don't fly, yeah.
You stole my line. I was going to say that.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's, see, I knew that would be. Okay, let's see. I think it's that one there, yeah. Nope, that was the one I just did. Good grief, come on. There we go. All right. And you just have to hit the arrow, or you can use the mouse too. Just watch out for all the spaghetti.
I got it. All right. Thanks for having me. My name is David Briseño. I'm a wildlife biologist with USDA Wildlife Services. I started here in March, just a year ago, last January. I moved out from New York, where I was working with the USDA for almost 6 years at airports. I covered 4 different airports, and I know a lot of you guys are military or ex-military, so you might have been to Stratton Air National Guard in Schenectady, Stewart Air National Guard at Stewart Airport, Albany Airport, a couple other commercial airports. Did some work at JFK, some work at Gabreski Airport, which has another Air National Guard unit. So I had a little bit of military experience before coming onto the base, but it was definitely a little bit of a culture shock going from commercial airports to full-time military. And I got to tell you, I like the change. I like the change.
Better weather.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think they're still shoveling snow right now.
Yes.
So that's me. Nothing too exciting. So this is why we have a batch program. Recently in November we had an ingestion of a red-tailed hawk by a C-17. This was at about 3,000 feet AGL. So it's kind of right at the cusp of where you don't see many strikes up above 3,000 feet. And this was about, they were just about to make the left turn, so maybe a mile and a half north of the base. So it was off base, but we still have issues right here at March with these same type of birds. I got the question a lot when I first started here, what do you think our biggest wildlife issue is? And just from being out on the field a few times, I can tell you the biggest issue is probably your raptors. When I was up in New York, there's water everywhere. There's waterfowl, ducks, and geese were the worst. They're, top of the list. But here, not so much. But what we do have is a lot of raptors. And the reason why is, of course, all the small mammals that they have to feed on out there on the field. And if any of you have spent any time out there, then you know that the field is kind of riddled with ground squirrels and other rodents and small mammals. So I spend a lot of my time trying to manage those species to reduce the attraction of these guys. And one of the main components of the bass program here is trapping and relocation of raptors. So I have a couple of traps out throughout the airfield, and I move them around a couple times depending on the bird activity and whether or not the trap is producing. So these are some of the species that we've caught: great horned owls, barn owls, species that you're not going to see during the day, you may not ever see during your time out here, and also the red-tailed hawk, probably the most common hawk in the U.S. And they can all cause significant damage. Another raptor we have is golden eagles. They're not here all the time, but depending on the season, they'll be here more and more. So we do have a permit to scare the eagles away. Prior to having this, when an eagle was on the airfield, it was on the airfield, and there was nothing we could do about it. So we procured the permit, and now we can chase them away. And another point with the eagles, and this kind of gets to the heart of what any bass program is. The basis of all bass programs are habitat management. And you can just kind of see in the picture the ditch there in the middle. Those little green spots were some trees that were growing up in there. And you see the runway on the right, and those trees are outside the fence. So that was March JPA property. So I coordinated with March Joint Powers Authority, Gary Gosliga, and he was able to schedule a removal, and they've gone out and removed the trees, and in addition clean up a lot of the vegetation along the fence line, which is also good for monitoring wildlife. So we're not just managing wildlife here on base, we also have to go outside the property sometimes to manage wildlife. Now in the past, March has employed falconers and dog services to run the bass program, and those are both really, really great tools. But at some point, the birds are just going to keep coming back. So you do have to do something to reinforce those types of harassment, and in some cases just reduce the population. So I said I spent a lot of time managing ground squirrels because they attract the raptors, and through trapping and shooting, and in addition to that, airfield management does some toxicants through another contractor. So we're trying actively to reduce that population so we get less and less raptors in the area. Rabbits, big attraction for the eagles. And we do get some feral dogs from time to time. And if we need to, we try to get animal control out here to take them to the shelter. I've caught one and taken them there myself. And if not, we just try to get them off the airfield and go on their merry way. Coyotes, we do see them from time to time. There aren't any that are denning directly on the airfield, but they are in the area, so they do come on from time to time. And when they do, we try to either chase them away or remove them if we can. Same thing for birds. And although we do practice lethal removal, that's really just to reinforce our dispersal. And I use pyrotechnics myself and my vehicle to disperse the birds. And you see, over the course of the first 9 months I was here, I've dispersed about almost 10 times as many animals as I removed. So try not to get too hung up on the lethal removal practices. So those are my kind of day-to-day activities on the base, and from here I'll just speak about general wildlife management at airports, and hopefully this will maybe help you try to avoid hitting birds in your planes. Like I said, the basis of all wildlife management is habitat management. If you want to protect an endangered species, then you protect the habitat. Well, we're doing the opposite. We want to get species out of the area, so we're trying to remove their habitats. So that's the number one thing. And nationwide, the trend is that damaging strikes below 500 feet, below 500 feet, those strikes that occur right at or near the airports, those strikes are going down. So that means airports and Air Force bases are doing a good job of managing the species on base, managing the habitats on base, and reducing those strikes. But outside the airport, those strikes are kind of remaining the same, and at some places going up. So if we look at the habitat around March, mostly coastal sage, dry throughout most of the year, but we do have some major bodies of water in the area, Lake Paris, and even the ponds at the National Cemetery are a big wildlife attractant. They're the only water around for miles. That's a high commodity for wildlife in the Southwest. So those are stopover areas for migratory waterfowl. Just at the cemetery, I've observed lots of different species of waterfowl, geese. We have flocks of cormorants, which are fish-eating birds, about the size of large ducks. And any given morning, about 6:30, they're flying from the cemetery to Lake Paris, and they're crossing right over the airfield. So we're working with the cemetery to maybe try and do something about those birds. Some other vegetation management. This grass management, this is part of the AFIs for military bases. They have to maintain their turf on the airfield between 7 and 14 inches. We really don't have any turf, so this kind of doesn't apply very well to March because we just have coastal sage, a lot of weedy vegetation, and some grass, but not a lot of grass. So in our case, it would probably be better to just mow the grass as low and as often as possible. The predator-prey interactions, we try to manage that by managing the small mammals. And you have to forgive me, this is kind of cobbled together from trainings and other briefings that I've given, so if it's not conforming altogether, that's why. Other practices we try to discourage: no feeding of wildlife. This happens a lot at commercial airports, taxi holding areas. Some FBOs I've had, put out food for feral cats, even bird feeders. But even simple things like trash bins that are left open, those will attract birds. Things like that, those are things that you can help police in your areas on the airfield. Agriculture and crops, not a big issue here, although we do have a little bit of an ag field south of the base. It doesn't appear to be a huge wildlife attractant at this point, so this isn't a big issue for us. For other airports, it can be. There are even airports that allow agriculture right on their airstrips, especially in the Midwest. They'll grow corn and other crops to try and mitigate their costs. And USDA actually did a research study to try and find, since there are all these airports that are growing crops already on the airfield, maybe we can find some crops that aren't going to be so attractive to wildlife, or at least to damaging species of wildlife. So they found that the typical hay products, switchgrass and things like that, those aren't going to attract geese or huge flocks of blackbirds. So the results are basically, if you're going to practice agriculture on your airport, try and move to something like that. And I think some airports are actually turning a profit by using that switchgrass and things like that for biofuels. And there's other studies going around for changing land uses to things like solar arrays, and trying to get airports to think of other ways to use their land that's not going to attract wildlife and may be more cost effective than maintaining a big turf area. Water issues, we have some. After rains, there's going to be standing water out there, and we will get ducks, we will get herons and other water birds coming in. So after rains, you want to be vigilant as you're taxiing out there. And as a general message, if you do see any waterfowl that would, or any wildlife out there that will give you pause, just report it to the tower, and they report that down to either airfield management or myself, and we can get out there and get them out of the way. So ephemeral water, we still have a little bit of standing water left over from the recent rains we had. Most of it's dried up now, but there's still a little bit there. And any amount of water in a dry climate is going to attract wildlife. So I always patrol those areas. We kind of already talked about this. But some other technologies that are coming up, bird radar. Some of you have probably heard of this, and the military has deployed some of these overseas. And there are a few bases here stateside that use some of these radar systems. And they're a great technology. They detect birds readily, and what they give you is a readout like this. And they kind of sell them as, you know, a controller maybe could be monitoring the bird radar and give real-time directions to a pilot about to land that there's a big flock of birds coming in. Well, it's not really how it works. It doesn't turn around that fast, so you can't get that real-time detection. But it will, work 24 hours to detect birds. And so what you can say is, at these times of day, we're having a lot of birds on the radar. Maybe we'll elevate the bird watch condition, maybe just put a NOTAM out to pilots to let them know that that's a busy time. And it also helps direct bash management efforts, so that if we know there's a certain time of day where there's a lot of birds out, then that's where we'll direct our patrols and be active, harassing or shooting or do whatever we need to do to manage species. So it's a good technology, but it's not a replacement for boots on the ground. USDA also did a study for lighting fixtures on aircraft to see how birds will react to different lighting configurations on planes, and then they used pinned wild geese and this nice RC plane to do some of their testing, and it was promising. The birds did react to flashing lights and different arrays, but when you're talking about a whole fleet of military and or commercial airplanes adopting something like this, you're talking about millions of dollars and regulations, and so any new developments like this will take years to be put into effect, if at all. Some other things we do, we have put up perching deterrents, and one thing you'll see is I'm out there every day, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. You'll see me out in my USDA truck, and if you ever want to holler at me for any reason, just wave me down or give me a call. But I'm out there every day doing runway patrols a couple times a day, checking my traps and things like that. So I'm out there on the ground, and that's kind of the basic first step is to just be out there, record what's out there, and do whatever management you need to do. So I do a lot of harassment. Some exclusionary devices, we have put up bird spikes on the airfield signage out there. You probably noticed that last year. That has reduced the perching of hawks on those distance remaining markers, which was the biggest concern for me. There'll still be a couple out there from time to time, but it's nowhere near like when they were empty. Some other deterrents that can be attached, things like that. The fence, I'm doing a lot of fence patrols, and our fence out here is good for security, not so good for wildlife. It's only about 5 feet high, and when I was in New York, we had to deal a lot with deer, and a 5-foot fence for a deer is nothing, and for a coyote it's nothing either. I've seen it jump right over. So one of my recommendations to the base is going to be to improve the fence as they can, and build it up higher, and possibly attach, as you see in the bottom left corner there, some kind of skirting on the bottom to prevent things from digging under. Because while you can't prevent birds from coming onto the airfield, you can do a pretty good job of preventing large mammals from getting on. And if we can get the funds to do that, then that will go a long way in preventing those large mammal strikes. So these are some of the tools that are used for harassment. We don't have any propane cannons out there, but just the basic bird bombs and screamers that they have. And these are available commercially to like farmers and things like that have problems with wildlife. And they're just firecracker type devices that scare the birds away. Selective removal. We have done some trapping here for coyotes. Shooting of basically more of the small mammals than anything else here, especially the ground squirrels and rabbits. Other types of population management, pigeon trapping, traps for the ground squirrels. And if we ever do get out and manage some waterfowl at some of the areas, it might look something like this, where we go out and oil the eggs so they don't have a big explosion of population. And that's especially targeting Canada geese. We do a lot of shooting, and there are lots of different airports that do a lot of different ways. Some don't have any shooting at all. Some have year-round shooting programs. Some are just, shoot as you go. So the takeaway message here is that you have to use a variety of techniques. We call it an integrated pest management plan, using lethal and non-lethal methods to manage wildlife. And the first step in all of this is to manage the habitat here. And being in Southern California, we're blessed by Mother Nature, where we don't have a lot of trees. We don't have a lot of water that's going to attract wildlife. But there are still things we can do to lower the risk. You can't 100% prevent wildlife strikes from happening, but we can manage that risk. And some resources available to you. That's an incorrect website there on the bottom. I have the corrected one on the next slide. But there are lots of different agencies that deal with this issue. The FAA, USDA, and like I said, I'm here Monday through Friday. And if you ever have any wildlife issues, you can feel free to contact me. And there's my contact information there. And I have a couple cards if any of you want to grab one as you're going out. And one thing I wanted to ask was, do you guys have any sort of wildlife strike collection program?
Yeah, we have in the Aero Club, we have a kit that we have in there in case if we hit a bird, there's a kit up on the safety board.
Okay.
With instructions and all that, how to turn it in and all that.
Sounds like it doesn't happen very often.
No.
Which is good.
We've had one strike in the last 3 years. We've had one strike in one of our least reported.
Okay, well, try to shorten things up. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But if you have any questions now or later, feel free to give me a shout, email. Most reliable way to contact me is the cell phone. Question?
What kind of firearms do you use as far as the removal aspect?
I have a shotgun and the air rifle. I use quite a bit, more than anything else, especially for the ground squirrels.
12 gauge pump, automatic?
It's a 12 gauge, but no, super bucky.
Now we're talking. All right.
So if we see you pull out a shotgun, you so happen to be driving near us when we're taxiing out, not to be alarmed.
Yeah, that's
Because I had that happen in Salt Lake City where I was flying, and a guy in the same kind of truck as yours got out, pulled out a shotgun, and we're like, what the heck's going on? Like, are we in trouble or anything?
Yeah.
But nope, just some wildlife management.
Yeah, that's me. And my truck is marked, so
Okay.
pretty good idea. And I carry my firearms out in the open, no cases or bags, so for all the honest world to see, as the song says.
Don't put any rags on your head or anything.
No.
Yeah.
That's against our directives anyway. I gotta stay in uniform. But that's all I have, and thanks again for having me, and feel free to contact me if you have any issues.
Okay. All right. Good presentation. How many of you know about the bird strike kit that we have in the office in there? Yeah. It's up on the board right near the drinking fountain. And if you hit a bird, you do everything you can to try to get what's left of it. And Kit has instructions in as to what to do. And believe it or not, they do research that. That's how they have these statistics as to bird strikes, is through that type of thing. And they can actually get right down to the species of the bird that you hit and the whole works. And then Bob and I investigate how you hit the bird. But usually it's unpreventable. And as long as we don't find out that you guys were nose diving or something like that. Wow, we got 14 minutes. We can just stand here and stare at each other, or I can dismiss you. Okay, has everybody signed the sheet? Okay? And David, I need you to sign the sheet. Okay, let's see, the next meeting's on, yeah, it's in February. It's February, it's the 18th, I think it's the 18th.
18th.
Yeah, no, it's the 17th. Yep, it's the 17th. So, now, we'll discuss this thing about what's going on in the 11th. We might classify that as being a safety meeting. It depends on just what we find out in terms of what's being covered. That meeting on the 11th is going to be held here in this room. So we could make that be our safety meeting. It's a week prior than what our normal meeting is. We'll see. Okay, I just might do that. Okay.
Can we sign in now?
No. And besides, you need to learn something. You need to have your, anyhow. Okay, and I guess that's it.
All right.